Awesome. All righty. So where we're going to pick up is on page 120. And we're going to dive into the first full paragraph. And man, I just wanted to acknowledge that today is June 10th, and in Alcoholics Anonymous, that's celebrated as Founders Day. Yeah, Founders Day. Woo-hoo. Oh, I should have. Hold on, because we got some celebrations. So I feel like I got to go like this. Get that going. Yeah. And it's at this point that I wish that I had like planned things better. Because it would be great if I was at a Vision for You and we were talking about this moment in history, or it would be great if I was at like the 4th to the 2nd edition. Oh, it'd be great, but I'm not. So we'll celebrate Founders Day with emojis and background things and service. That's how we'll celebrate. So glad you guys are here celebrating Founders Day. Alrighty, so page 120, first full paragraph. And this is an exciting part of the book. And if you saw my little announcement when I was either last week or kind of when I put out the flyer, I was like, oh, this is one of very few places, one of only 3 places in the book where it tells us and gives us specific directions on what to do after we've relapsed, after coming to 12 step. And you might think, Paige, why is this one of the only places? Well, part of the reason is once we come to 12 step, it's actually not a common occurrence when we're following the clear-cut directions as laid out in this book. Do you know what I mean? When I am doing this work, when I'm following these directions, it is rare to see somebody relapse. So we don't need extra special directions. I love that people are changing their backgrounds. We got fireworks and it's exciting. All right, so let's see what those directions are. So it says, perhaps your husband will make a fair start on the new basis. And basis is basis of life, way of life. That's what we're talking about. These 12 steps are a way of life. And some of you guys know I talk about it a lot. It's not a set it and forget it program. I often say I can't have crockpot sobriety, where you set it and forget it. I got to have stir-fry sobriety where I'm in it every day. I'm constantly moving it. And some of you might be better chefs than me and be like, that's not how that works. I haven't bothered to learn. I don't know how to make a stir-fry. All righty. But I get into it. All righty. So, but just as things are going beautifully, he dismays you by coming home drunk. So it breaks our heart, right? If you are satisfied that he really wants to get over drinking, you need not be alarmed. Though it is infinitely better that he have no relapse at all, as has been true with many of our men, it is by no means a bad thing in some cases. And here's why. And here is the specific direction. Your husband will see at once that he must redouble his spiritual activities if he expects to survive. And what we're going to do is a little bit of just very brief, kind of a step one, just kind of go over a step one review. Because to be an alcoholic or to be an addict or to be a compulsive, whatever brings you to the study today, there are 2 symptoms we have in common. And one is the physical allergy. Once I start, I can't stop. Once I start, I can't control it. I don't know about you guys. Once I start, I need more. And the more that I drink or the more that I use or the more that I engage in that addictive behavior, the more I need. You know what I mean? For most people, they're like 3 drinks and they're like, ooh, I'm feeling it. And then they get like a stop sign. They're like, ooh, I'm feeling it. I should stop. And for me, I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling it. Green means go, 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 right? I need more. That's my experience. And so what that means is once I start to drink, I can't control the amount that I take. And what that means is I tend to cross these lines that I said I would never cross. I tend to do things I said I would never do. I tend to hurt people in ways I said I would never hurt them. And I get to this point where my life becomes one that is absolutely unrecognizable to somebody like me. And this is my real problem as an alcoholic or an addict or whatever brings you to this study today. My real problem is that I come to and I say, I am never going to do it again. But my desire to not drink, my desire to not use, my desire to stay sober has no effect. a day, a week, several months down the line, I get a thought, and that thought tells me this time will be different. It tells me nobody will ever know. It tells me I just got to get it out of my system. It tells me my problem was, drinking with Canadians, but we got some Americans here. Or it tells me, my problem was, this drug, but I can use this drug. You know what I mean? Whatever lie, and I do it again. When we talk about step one in this study, as we go through step one, what we begin to really see is the inevitability of a relapse. I do not have the ability to choose whether I will drink again. And what that means on my own power, if my illness is untreated, and what that means is I will drink again. Do you know what I'm saying? That's a step one idea, that I will drink again. And so when we come to the rooms and people are relapsing, or chronic relapsers are in and out, or we ourselves have relapsed, we often want to do that thing where we want to figure out what happened. Do you know what I mean? We want to dive in and be like detectives, like relapse detectives, which I feel like could be a show on A&E. I don't know. The detectives that investigate these vicious felonies are members of an elite squad known as the They Need Al-Anon unit. I didn't plan that out ahead of time. I just want you to know I didn't pre-think of that. That happened. And I'm so sorry. But when we're talking about this, that idea that it's not like what happened. It wasn't that the wind blew too hard. It wasn't that there was a breakup. It wasn't these external factors. For me as an alcoholic, before I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, or before I come to the rooms of 12 Step, there is one reason for a relapse. It is the inevitability of the first drink. I will relapse. Why did I relapse? Because of course I was going to relapse. Do you know what I'm saying? I will relapse. Now, after I come to the rooms of 12 Step, we have another relapse, another reason for why somebody like myself might relapse. And the reason is a failure to grow spiritually. What I come to see is that nothing less than a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience that I need to grow. I can't stay stagnant on that, but nothing less than a spiritual experience, and I will relapse. So I don't need to figure out what happened. What happened is obvious. What happened is I did not do the work to produce the spiritual awakening, or I stopped doing the work that allowed me to live in that state of spiritual awakening. It is just that simple. And it's not and that's the thing, is sometimes when people come back after a relapse, we say these things that feel true, but are misinformed. How often have we heard he didn't want it enough? She must not have been ready, right? I don't think that's true. I don't know about you. There were times I desperately wanted to stop, but it had no effect. And what happened is a lot of us did not know what we needed to know in order to achieve sobriety. I did not know that I was going to drink again. I did not know that my solution was a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience. I heard people say a whole bunch of suggestions, things like get a sponsor, get a big book, get a home group, be of service, 90 meetings in 90 days, and all these different things. Now, some of those are very, very good suggestions, but some of them won't keep me sober. Do you know what I'm saying? And listen, I'm sure I'm the only one here that saw the steps on the wall, and I was like, oh, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm not very interested in any of those. So I'm going to try to do all the other stuff. You know what I mean? I'll dive. Let me chair all your meetings. Let me make all your coffee. Let me do I want to do that. I don't want to have to do a searching and fearless moral inventory. That seems like a lot of work. You know what I mean? And so oftentimes when we're balking at the steps, it's because I don't know what is wrong with me. I don't know that which I suffer from, and I don't know how to get well. And so the directions for relapse are this clear: that we must redouble our spiritual activities if we expect to survive. So to redouble is to double it, to go again and double it. So it's really what wasn't I doing? I need to start doing. What wasn't in place? if I was sitting on a 4-step, I'm sure no one here has ever relapsed while sitting on a 4-step. But it's sitting on a 4-step. I need to get that done. I need to be working on it daily and getting it done quickly. If I was putting off that 5th step because I'm afraid, I'm sure no one here has ever avoided doing their 5th step. Uh, I'm sure no one here has ever had various bouts of cholera and dysentery and all the I'm sick, I can't make it. I'm sure no one has. I'm going for obscure. I have tuberculosis. I can't come. Just the obscure reasons for why I'm not showing up, right? And I'm sure no one here has ever put off an amends. I know. And I'm sure none of us have ever been like, oh, I'm a little nervous to sponsor and trying to avoid that. No, we all dove in right away. Ain't no thing. Right. And who here ever misses daily prayer, daily meditation, evening review? I'm sure no one. I know it's annoying with my sponsees because I'm actually incredibly disciplined with these things. So I don't miss them. I'm easily institutionalized is the takeaway. Not that I'm Little Miss Perfect, is that I would do well in an institution. I'm like, I adapt to routine quite well. But that's what I need to do. When there is a relapse, it's not, oh, what do I got to do? It is this. We need to get right down to fundamentals. So it says, you need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. So it's that idea of like, hey, like pick our battles, pick our time. If somebody relapses, we don't have to be a dink about it. He will know of it. Cheer him up and ask how you can be still more helpful. And again, that is a principle that we see throughout this book. How can I be helpful? Not how can I save you? Not how can I drag you through the actions of recovery? Because that's not my job. Like, how can I be helpful? And I love that. We talk about that in working with others. We talk about that throughout this thing, helpful, useful, not fixing, not managing, not saving. How can I be helpful in you redoubling your spiritual efforts? Boom. It's that simple. It's that simple. All right. So it says the slightest sign of fear and tolerance may lessen your husband's chance of recovery. And we can look at our own experience. Hey, did people trying to fix and manage and control and micromanage our lives and, do all those things? Did that make me resentful and avoidant? And do you know what I mean? Like, has that not been my experience on the other side of it? Those manipulative things of like, we're just going to hide the bottles, I'm like, no, I know you did that. I catch it. So in a weak moment, he may take your dislike of his high-stepping friends as one of those insanely trivial excuses to drink. Now, again, if I'm drinking, it is not because of any of those insanely trivial excuses. It is not because my spouse or partner, husband or what have you, does not like all the drunks that I'm spending time with. It is because I am disconnected from God. And then I love that Rob's put a definition for high step in friends, having or moving with a high step, a little like spring in the step. Oh, I had an argument with this sponsee, like not an actual argument, but one about whether or not I could frolic. Those of you that don't know, I'm in a wheelchair, and I was like, I can't frolic. Frolic involves high stepping, and my sponsee was adamant that frolicking could occur. And I want you guys to know, I was wrong. I can frolic, apparently. So just, I love her like, yeah, Founders Day, fireworks, frolicking, woo! But I felt like frolicking was like a skipping motion. I can be wrong. All right. So it says, we never try to arrange a man's life so as to shield him from temptation. The slightest disposition on your part to guide his appointments or his affairs so he will not be tempted will be noticed. Make him feel absolutely free to come and go as he likes. This is important. And so it's telling us it's important. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you guys, it's important. But the book is telling us, hey, this is important. If he gets drunk, don't blame yourself. God has either removed your husband's liquor problem, or he has not. And again, it is that simple. Why would I relapse? The problem has not been removed by God. It's that simple. And if it is not removed by God, I will relapse. It is inevitable. It will happen. And so if it has not been removed. What do I need to do? It's not live in shame. It's not feel bad about myself. It's not any of that. It's dive into this work, right? That's what I'm called to do. All righty. And yes, I can. All right. So um, God has either removed your husband's liquor problem or he's not. And again, I'm just hammering that home because it's like I don't remove it. I don't do it. I take the actions of the steps. God removes it. God does the heavy lifting in this thing. I take actions I don't like. I like them now, but I didn't at first. I take actions I don't like. I take actions I don't think will help me. I take them anyways, and God removes from me that which I could never remove by myself. And it says, if not, it had better be found out right away. Then you and your husband can get right down to fundamentals. And what are the fundamentals? The fundamentals are all 12 steps taken out of this book. That's the fundamentals. That is the foundation for my life. And that's what we're here to practice. These 12 steps taken out of this book. So again, if somebody relapses, it's as simple as let's dive into this work. No guilt, no shame, no feeling bad. I mean, of course, you're like, we're going to have feelings about it, but we're not here to guilt you or shame you or belittle you or berate you. But here's the actions that we can take. Let's redouble our efforts. Let's dive in. And God's got you. God's got you. And if you were like, girl, I don't know if I believe you, hold on, because I do this thing with the ADHD that I don't have. It's really weird that you think I do, where I skip ahead a sentence in my brain and then I read and we'll see what I was talking about. So it says, if a repetition is to be prevented, a repetition, which means continued relapsing. So if I don't want to relapse again, it says place the problem along with everything else in God's hands. In God's hands. And I've done sort of big book bounce arounds where I talk about the topic in God's hands, in God's hands. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to put myself in God's hands. I'm trying to put the problem in God's hands. How do I get me into God's hands? These 12 steps taken out of this book. It is just that simple. I don't have to overthink it. I don't have to overcomplicate it. That's what I got to do to get well. Take some inventory. Share it with somebody. Have my quiet hour. Become willing, then ask for God to take it away, those defects of character. Go out, make my amends. Continue that process in the 10th step. Continue to catch things in the 11th step. And continue to pray and meditate and carry this message to others. That's it. That's it. And of course, it is helpful to go to meetings because where else am I going to find newcomers to work with? I have not yet. Actually, that's not true. I had my ex-boyfriend, like we've been broken up for 10 years. He showed up at the house the other day. He was not sober and knocked at the back door. But other than that incident, I have not had drunks just randomly, strolling through the basement. I got to go out and find them. It's a funny story. Anywho, that's maybe not the takeaway, but it's just my brain was like, that's not factual. You had somebody show up the other night. He did want my help, but not in the type of help that I had to offer. He was not interested in a spiritual awakening as the result of the 12 steps. Again, we've been broken up over a decade, so so it says we realize that we have been giving you much direction and advice. We may have seemed to lecture. If that is so, we are sorry, for we ourselves do not always care for people who lecture us. But what we have related is based on experience, some of it painful. Again, just the whole idea that this whole book is a textbook that is based on and related to our experience. It is an experience-based book. What I mean by that is it's not some intellectual saying, I think this is a good idea. No, this is a book based on here is what we have done and the results that came as the result of that. Do you know what I mean? This is grounded in something better, or not better, deeper than I had a good idea. Because I'm sure we all know what it's like to have a good idea and then watch that and go up in flames. You know what I'm saying? So it says, some of it painful. We had to learn these things the hard way. That is why we are anxious that you understand and that you avoid these unnecessary difficulties. So to you out there who may be soon with us, we say good luck and God bless you. Now there is an asterisk, and in that asterisk, it directs us to the Fellowship of Al-Anon. So we're going to go to a place in the book we don't normally go. Let's pop over to page 573, right at the very, very back of the book. It's right before the concepts, I believe. Yep. And so we're in the page, How to Get in Touch with AA. It's Roman numeral 6 VI of the appendices. I did that Roman numeral math really quickly, and some of you guys saw me doing it. I closed my one eye to do the math, which is old behavior. If you're closing the one eye to do things, you guys know. All right. And so let's go to the third paragraph, or no, sorry, fourth paragraph down. Fourth paragraph down, this is what I want to point out. It said, should you be the relative or friend of an alcoholic who shows no immediate interest in AA? It is suggested that you write Al-Anon family groups. And it's one of the, I'm just pointing that out. If I'm worried about somebody's sobriety and they're not interested, and that's really the kind of the thrust of Two Wives, is how do I help people with various levels of willingness? And if I want to help somebody and they have absolutely no interest, then I'm the one that needs help. Do you know what I'm saying? And I've got to seek help for it. I'm bothered by their drinking. There's something inside of me that needs to change. And actually, that, God bless him, the ex that showed up at my door, I remember many, many, many years ago, when I was with him, he went off on a relapse, and he had I'm going to say like a sponsor, like in name. I don't think they did any of this. I know they didn't do this, but the evidence. I remember because he went on a relapse, and I called up his sponsor. I'm like, hey, is there anything you can do and help him? And he said probably like the most impactful thing that I had heard. And it was like, Paige, you're the one that's calling. You're the one that needs help. So what can I do for you? Do you know what yeah. And that has stuck with me. And it's been very helpful as I've done helpline work in various fellowships, and people call the helpline and they call about their loved ones. And I can share my experience as a loved one, a family member of somebody who's an alcoholic, and as somebody who has done some Al-Anon. And some of you guys are like, girl, we know you need it. Yeah. All right. So let's pop over to chapter 9, the family afterward. And one of the things is I always love diving into like the titles of these later chapters, because often when we're in meetings we get tripped up over the titles. We Two Wives, and we read some out of Two Wives and we speak on Two Wives, and it's just like, I'm not a wife, never had a wife, or I don't have a wife anymore because of the drinking, or hopefully I'm a better partner or spouse now that I'm sober. But we miss the directions, getting tripped up over the title. Similarly, we see that in Two Employers, where it's like the theme of the meeting is, I was not a great employee when I was drinking. Now I am sober. Better employee. That's usually the thrust of the meeting, but there's directions and information. And so when we talk about the family afterward, what I want to contextualize is this is the family after the spiritual awakening. Not after the alcoholic or the addict has come to a 12-step fellowship, not after going to rehab, not after going to some meetings. It is pointedly and directly after the spiritual awakening. And there's a couple reasons we're gonna see the discussion about that as we go through, but we're also going to remember, as we went through Two Wives, the alcoholic was drunk, the alcoholic was drunk, and the alcoholic was drunk. And then last week I'm like, hey guys, the alcoholic is sober. So we're at a transition point. So these are directions on how to navigate difficulties that will arise in the family with the alcoholic living this way of life, this 12-step way of life, after the spiritual awakening, after they have recovered. So it says our women folk. And I know a lot of people are like, do not call me women folk. I take the opposite track. I'm like, call me women folk. I'm so here for that. You can call me women folk all day. Our women folk have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with the husband who is recovering. And what I want to point out is that is one of the few places in the book it talks about recovering. Most of the places in this book, it is recovered. I will say we do have convalescence and convalescing, which is synonyms for recovering. That'll come up in a couple chapters. But I think the reason it says recovering is that same transition that I was talking about. At the first part of the chapter in Two Wives, the alcoholic is drunk. And then the alcoholic gets sober. And how the alcoholic gets sober is through these 12 steps. So that it's that transition it's referring to, which is just, it's interesting that we don't talk about recovering a whole lot in the book. Probably because it does not take long to get well. Some of you guys that like know me, you're like, girl, I know you say that all the time. I don't even realize how much I say it, but it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to have a spiritual awakening. It does not take long to go from hopeless to hope, from absolutely, I will drink again, to recovered, where the mental obsession is removed. That's important. And I think that is why we don't talk about recovering, because it doesn't take long to get recovered. I also want to point out, recovered does not mean cured. Recovered means the mental obsession has been relieved as the result of these 12 steps. I would describe myself and define myself as recovered. But if I stop doing some stuff, like, listen, I could probably coast a little while. It'll be miserable for everyone as I coast, but I could probably coast a little while. But very quickly, we'll see how not recovered I become when the drink comes to mind, and then the drink comes to lips. So it says, perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal, which all I'm saying is, yeah, I would like that. I don't know about you guys. Like, I could use like a cotton swaddling. And I will say, though, pedestals are not wheelchair accessible. So actually don't put me on one of those. I tell my swatsies that all the time. I'm like, it's not accessible. Don't put me on a pedestal. Um, and I did have a sponsee one time who went and looked up wheelchair accessible pedestals, like for the Paralympics, and I'm like, that is a level to attention to detail that I jive with. So I was wrong. Anywho, but so it says successful readjustment means the opposite. Oh man, I'll get my little cotton snuggie and then put me on a pedestal and tell me how great I am. Darn it. Successful readjustment means the opposite. And it says all members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. And one of the things I love to do in the later chapters is tie together the threads that we saw throughout the whole book. So we're going to do a couple bounce arounds. Please bear with me, or don't. Bearing with me is consensual. You don't have to. But let's pop over to page 83. And so when we go to page 83, and as we talk about 83, we're really talking about page 83. It's the first full paragraph right at the top of the page, right? We're talking about how we continue to make that amends with the family. You know, of course, we have the direct amends, but how we continue to demonstrate this change, this way of life. And at the very end of that paragraph, that last sentence, it says, so we clean house with the family, asking, and any time in this book it says ask. What is that but a prayer? Asking each morning in meditation. Oh man, you know what that means? That means I have a daily meditation practice. Oh man, I gotta do it. You know what I'm saying? Tell me I gotta do it. But asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. And it being Founders Day, there was a talk going around that was like Bill Wilson, it was Lois, and it was Ebby, and then it was Sister Ignatia. I only got through Bill and Lois because I had a bit of a busy day. But Lois was talking about something, and I was like, girl, yes, she's my homie. She's talking about, it's like these principles that get me out of the way so God can flow through me. She said it a little more eloquently. I said it how I always say it, but I was like, yes, like that's it. Like I can't pull tolerance and kindness and love out of my butt. Like I just can't. I try to just be tolerant and like with family, family, the ones that have the buttons, that push the buttons, that know the buttons, you know what I'm saying? So I need God's patience, tolerance, and kindliness to flow through me. And that's what we're doing. So that mirrors what we saw on page 122. Now let's go back to page 118. So back to 2 wives. So we're going to see that this is a thread that's carried through. So page 118. And it's the second full paragraph on page 118, right where it says your husband knows he owes you more than sobriety. Sounds like 83, sounds like 82. Sobriety is not an amends. Sobriety is the beginning. And it says he wants to make good, yet you must not expect too much. His ways of thinking and doing are the habits of years. Patience, tolerance, understanding, and love are the watchwords. You'll notice how similar they are to 83 and how similar they are to page 122. And it said this is the direction. So on page 83, I got to ask God to work through me in that place of meditation. On page 118, it says, show him these things in yourself and they will be reflected back to you from him. I got to show it first. Oh, you know what I mean? How often we're in an argument with somebody, it's like, I'll be nice when they be nice. I've got to be nice first. That's what it's saying. I know, I'm just here to ruin days. Just ruin days. Hopefully help relationships, but I'm going to ruin your day first. All right. So live and let live is the rule. Back to 122. So all members of the family should meet upon the common ground of tolerance, understanding, and love. And so that's where we're meeting. I've got to bring that to the table. That's what I've got to bring. And it says this involves a process of deflation. And what needs to be deflated? My ego, my selfishness, my self-centeredness, that which is blocking me from God. That's what I got to do. And really, I mean, these 12 steps really are an ego deflating proposition, because we have a look at those. It's like, I don't want to do any of it. It doesn't look good. It doesn't look appealing to me, you know? But that's what we're here to do. Deflate the things inside of us that are blocking us off from God. And I love that it says deflation, because it really does imply that the thing that we all know, that we've all experienced, which is the restorative power of the human ego. You know, we know what it's like when that balloon has filled right back up with self, you know, the self balloon. And it is, oh man, hold on, we'll do that, hold on. Reactions, and then the self balloons. Yeah, I know. That doesn't work for anyone that's just listening or listening to the recording after. But surprise, self balloons. So those continue to reinflate, and we know that we have to continue to go through this process. But I say have to because my life depends on it. But after a while, it becomes I get to deflate my ego. I get to experience a truer and deeper humility, which is to say a truer and deeper version of myself and really who I always wanted to be and who closer and closer to who I believe God has called me to be. So the alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws having fixed ideas, that can't be accurate. I'm sure no one here knows what that's like with the in-laws. Each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitudes towards himself or herself. So we're showing up with these expectations, showing up with how we think the family should meet, how we think this now sober, recovered alcoholic should show up, how we think things should go. I know no one here has ever showed up with anything like that. No expectations, I'm sure not. All right. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands that others concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. Now, what we're going to see is we're alluding to page 61, the actor and the director in step 3. And it's such a clear allusion to it. We'll continue on. It says, and why not? Is it not because each wants to play the lead? Is he not trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is he not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family rather than give? And it's such a clear parallel to page 61. You know, on page 61, you guys know I'm tree number 3. You know, in the play Romeo and Juliet, now I'm trying to control everyone and tell them where they need to stand and how they need to go. And I'll be gracious and kind and loving, or I'll be demanding and like cruel and unkind and manipulative, or I'll have varied traits. But what happens is I try to get you to do what I think you should do. I try to manage your life, and you're like, girl, don't tell me what to do. Get off my back. And I start feeling hurt. That hurt my feeling. Just the one. I only have the one. Super vulnerable. I only have one. That hurt my feeling. And I get resentful and I begin to feel sorry for myself. And so what we see is that selfishness, self-centeredness, right? me trying to play God, me sitting in the delusion of the director's chair, trying to manage other people and not letting God be God in my life, not letting God be God in my family and the lives of those around me. And I love that it points to unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family life rather than give. And what I have found time and time again, when I show up to whatever it is, whether it's family, whether it's a meeting, whether it's work or a phone call, when I show up with what can I give, everything changes. Everything changes. Not what can I get or what can I give so that you like me and think well of me, but what can I give? And I don't know about you, if I'm trying to get from you, but here's my experience. If I'm trying to get from you, maybe being validated, maybe worth, maybe approval, maybe it's like I'm afraid of not getting enough financially or not getting enough attention. I'm operating from this place of scarcity. Like it feels like it is not enough and who I am is not enough and I don't have enough and there's not enough. And I try to get it from you, but you're human. And even if you give it to me, it's not enough and I need more. You know what I mean? I'm chasing that just like I chased everything else. But you see, when I come from a place of God-centeredness, where I'm seeking my worth, my affection, validation, approval, security, and safety, I'm seeking that from God. I can channel that to you. And the more that I give to you, here's what I found, the more it's abundant. You know, it's that love is not a finite resource. It only feels like a finite resource when I need you to love me. But when I'm giving love freely, man, I see that it's everywhere and it's abundant. And so when I can transition from what can I get to what can I give, that's when all my relationships change. So it goes on to say, 122, bottom paragraph, cessation from drinking is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. Stopping drinking is just the beginning. And I say this a lot. Sobriety by itself is not a solution to alcoholism. Cessation from drinking just thrusts me into the position where I'm faced with the mental obsession, which is a huge component of my illness. So it says, a doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. And I was going to say a modern, but a 12-step sort of word for neurotic would be spiritually sick. We were at another big book study earlier, hey guys, and talking about the bedevilments, right? The bedevilments on page 52 is a beautiful description of what neurotic looks like. Again, a more modern word could be deeply traumatized, deeply hurt. You know, my illness affected all those with whom I came into contact with. So it says, let families realize as they start their journey, the journey through these 12 steps, that all will not be fair weather. It's not going to be San Jose weather all day, every day, you know? And sometimes it's going to be Calgary weather. It's not been a great summer so far. It's been not great weather-wise, not weather-wise. We can always find gratitude. You know what I'm saying? Right? And it says, so it says, oh, sorry, I skipped ahead. The entire family is to some extent ill. So all of those who are in contact with us are affected by our illness. And again, that is, yes, absolutely. That is why Al-Anon family groups exists, because I don't even have to know the alcoholic. It could be a grandfather that I never met to see how this illness has hurt family members. And yeah, what we have in the chat is page 82. We feel a man is unthinking when he says sobriety is enough. Just not drinking does not repair the damage that I've done to my family, and just not drinking is not an answer to my alcoholism, because I will drink again. And as a result, I will destroy the family again. So it says, let families realize as they start their journey of the 12 steps that all will not be fair weather. Each in his turn may be footsore. So like that this is not easy, you know, like your feet are hurting on a long hike. That's what it's talking about. And may straggle. So straggle, that stumbling, you know, struggle, leg behind. Do you know what I mean? And it says there may be alluring shortcuts and bypaths, which they may wander and lose their way. I'm sure no one here has ever tried to enjoy a bypath, spiritually. I'm sure no one here has ever, but that's not a resentment. If you're wondering, I made some columns that are it's not a resentment. I'm just a little frustrated columns. They look eerily similar to the resentment ones, but totally different. So don't worry, you can do them if you're not resentful. You got to see what I did. Um, so it says, suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a family will meet. So there are obstacles in this new way of life. There are challenges in a family living this way of life. And it says, suppose we suggest how they may be avoided, even converted to good use for others. And I don't know about you, but for me, when life is happening, where obstacles are happening, or challenges are happening, just that idea of like, man, if I get through this, I'm going to be able to use this to help somebody else. Man, that's allowed me to face things I did not think I could face, to get through things I did not think I could get through. But yeah, ultimately, it'd be nice to avoid it in the first place. Although that is rarely how many of us learn, you know. I just got to bonk right into it a couple times, before I learned. Actually, there's that joke that to have alcoholism is to have a learning disability, in the sense that I am incapable of learning my lesson. Do you know what I mean? That old joke. Yeah. So the family of an alcoholic longs for the return of happiness and security. They remember when father was thoughtful, romantic, thoughtful, and successful. So in this context, I myself as the alcoholic, as the addict, I would be that person. And I don't know if I've ever been those things in my life, ever. I don't think I've ever been romantic. Although I will say I am pretty good at thoughtfulness. Successful, not so much. But they long for the days of when Paige was any of those, and I've never been. So today's life is measured against that of other years. And when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Now, I'm sure no one here has ever had that defect known as comparison, where we compare our life with maybe a life that we had before, some of those early successes. And I'm sure no one here has ever done this thing where we've created this hierarchy of people and comparing our lives to the lives of those around us. Oh, that person makes that much money. That person has that type of car. That person is married and has that many kids. And we compare and we think we're below certain people, and then we judge others to put ourselves above others. I'm sure no one else has had that defect, but I'll tell you I have. I'll tell you I have, because I am deeply flawed and frequently wrong. And I show up to life with this pervasive sense of who I am is not enough. And I create this hierarchy and I compare. And it gives me a little boost to better than ego, but I end up feeling worse. And so it says, family confidence in dad is rising high. The good old days will be back, they think. Sometimes they demand that dad bring them back instantly. God, they believe, almost owes this recompense on a long overdue account. So recompense would be like an amends, or to pay back. So a long overdue account. It's like, you've owed me this debt for this many years. Time to pay it back, right? But the head of the house has spent years pulling down the structures of business, romance, friendship, and health. These things are now ruined or damaged. It will take time to clear away the wreck. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, the new structures will take years to complete. Let's see if we've talked. I was going to be like, let's see if we've spoken about this before. We have. So we're going to go to page 21 and then 82 and then back to 123. But page 21 first. And we're in the section where it talks about what about the real alcoholic. And it's a very long paragraph. So we're going near the end of the page, right, where I'm just going to lead us in. He often is perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect, he's incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. That was never me, but many of us. And it says, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. So if I spent years, rebuilding and destroying and rebuilding and destroying. Now let's pop over to page 82. Page 82. And where we're looking is I love that idea of the alcoholic, bottom paragraph. And I'm gonna paraphrase it a little bit. We're talking about the alcoholic being the tornado. Do you know what I mean? Tornado roaring his way through the lives of others. Now I'm just going to read it apparently. Hearts are broken, I broke them. Sweet relationships are dead. And I killed them. Affections have been uprooted. I pulled the affections from out of their roots. I did that. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in turmoil. It has been my selfish and my inconsiderate habits that put the home in turmoil. It says we feel, and this is what we quoted earlier. I got you, Scott. We feel a man is unthinking when he says that sobriety is enough. He's like the farmer who comes up out of his cyclone cellar to find his home ruined. So I've destroyed it. I've pulled the structure down. To his wife, he remarked, "Don't see anything the matter here, Ma. Ain't it grand the wind stopped blowing?" So what we're seeing on page 123 is I have been the wind. I have been the tornado. I have been the one that destroyed those relationships, those affections. I destroyed the structures of business, romance, health, friendship. I destroyed them. And now I have stopped blowing. And I've begun to rebuild those structures through the amends process. But we know, especially with our families, with our loved ones, those who are closest to the eye of the storm, that which is closest to the eye of the storm gets the strongest winds. They were damaged far more than anyone else. It is going to take time to rebuild. And actually, let me rephrase that. It's not necessarily going to take time by itself. Because if I tear down, if I level the town, I level the city, I level the farm, and I wait 3 years, but I take no action, the farm is not going to get rebuilt. Nothing's going to happen. It is not time that repairs the structures. It is time with consistent action. So it will take time with consistent action, and they will be replaced with finer ones. So it says, Father knows, back on 123. Sorry, sometimes I go back to the page and I forget to tell everyone I went back to the page. I'm like, just join me. I got to tell you where I'm going for you to join me. So page 123, Father knows he is to blame. I am the one that caused the harm. It may take him many seasons of hard work to be restored financially, but he shouldn't be reproached. Perhaps he will never have much money again. So it's saying like, hey, like this is not where we need to pick on him or belittle him or berate him if he's not making the money that he used to. In fact, perhaps he will never have much money again. And it's actually, reproach is also criticized and shamed. And one, we just saw in 2 Wives over the last couple of weeks that shaming people into action does not prove long-term results. So you can shame me. And actually, I've had people try to shame me into a better financial position. That does not work. It doesn't work. And I mean, it's interesting. It's more income coming in that they wanted. I'm actually quite frugal when it comes to spending. Shame does not work. And what we're going to see is that like financial success is going to be on the way for most of us, many of us. Like that happens. Alcohol, drugs, it's expensive. You know what I mean? You're able to get a little savings in the bank account by not spending on that. But it's always important to know that's not what's promised here. We have promises. And it's just a fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us, but it doesn't mean that we're going to be rich or that economic insecurity will leave us. And why? And it's just, I think about like, it ties in. I think about like the co-founders on Founders Day. Yeah. They were not, Bill Wilson, page 3, I had arrived. He did not go back to I had arrived in the rest of his lifetime. He was able, actually, he and Lois were homeless in periods of his sobriety. They were couch surfing and living with other AA members. The stepping stones was ultimately like a gift that was given to them. They were like, hey, your mortgage will be whatever you're paying for rent already. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a gift that was given to them. They were never financially successful. Dr. Bob struggled financially. Fitzmayo was struggling financially. As we approach two employers, we're going to talk about Hank and his company Honor Dealers, which was also on a very steep and steady decline financially. But I think about the impact that they had on the world. It was far more than the impact that they had in their bank accounts. And what's promised here is something deeper than money. And here's the thing, it says, but the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to be rather than what he is trying to get. That's what I'm here for, right? Like, I don't know. I'm sure it'd be nice to have some money. I think I'm do okay. Like I'm really okay. But like it's far more about who God has called me to be. The type of person I am between the prayers in a meeting, the type of person I am outside of the meeting, the type of person I am when somebody calls me and asks me for help, the type of person that I am with my family, the type of person that I am, and hopefully the impact that I get to make on the world. That is what I would like my life to be about. Yeah. And actually, 5 minutes early, I don't know how I've done this, but that is actually a beautiful natural stopping place, because next week we get into one of my favorite places in the book on page 124. So I'm like, how have I been ending and wrapping it up early lately? Wild. But why don't we wrap it up there, and then we'll hop over next week into yeah. Did you want to just hop in, or do you want to wait for the recording to stop? After the recording. Okay, something exciting is happening after the recording, which is such a mean thing for me to say as I stop the recording, and people that are only listening on the recording, I feel like I should get, I don't know, I feel like I should give them a present or something. I don't know. But I'm glad you're listening. I love you guys. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.